Friday night football for Luton Town this week as we make the long trip to Turf Moor to take on Burnley in a huge game. To preview it with me is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Ready for a bit of Friday night football?
Massive game.
Absolutely massive. We'll preview it after this intro.
Can you believe it? We are Premier League! Yes!
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast. I'm Kev, and as I said before the intro, alongside me is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe to look ahead to Burnley away, 7:45pm kickoff Friday night. If you've got tickets, or if you're yet to get tickets, I think tickets are still available if you want to go. Then obviously you'll be there. If you're not, TNT Sports is the place to watch this game. Obviously a short notice turnaround, so do note Friday night, not Monday night for this game. James, I'm going to ask you if this is a must-win game of football, not because I particularly care if it's a must-win game of football or not, but the last time I asked you if it was a must-win game of football was at Sheffield United and we won the thing. So is it a must-win game of football?
Yes, it is. But I think it's more a must-win for Burnley because they will get cut adrift if not, because Luton have got a game in hand. They've got points on them. I think that they have to win. So Luton potentially could go up there, get a draw, come back home, decent result. Want to win, obviously, because it really separates the Luton from those two teams and then puts us in good stead for when that game in hand comes along. But I think it's the pressure is all on Burnley.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't disagree with that. However, with it being moved from Monday to Friday, we're now the first team to play down at the bottom. Whereas if we played on the Monday, Everton would have had first dibs on us on the Sunday and potentially the chance to put the pressure on us on the Monday. Now we've got the chance to put the pressure on Everton by playing on Friday night. By the time Everton play on Sunday afternoon, they could be back in the bottom three, and they haven't exactly pulled up many trees recently, Everton. And obviously Dominic Calvert-Lewin potentially still suspended if that red card in the cup holds up. So were we to win the game, getting out of the bottom three, putting the pressure on Everton would be massive. Obviously a draw is not enough because Everton have got us on the goal difference situation. So we're getting to that kind of stage where playing first and putting the pressure and the ball in the other court is important, and we've got a chance to do that here.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge game, obviously, for all the ramifications that it leads us to in the relegation battle, and also because they got a win at the Kenny earlier in the season when they didn't deserve to. Great strike, don't get me wrong, but we all felt really hard done by. That was the only real game this season where we've been probably quite gutted about it, because the performance against such a close rival in the league warranted a lot more. But so there's that angle to it. So a bit of revenge on there at the Andros Townsend situation, which
we'll come on to.
We'll come on to. Also, Luton haven't gone up there and won for 23 years now. I mean, albeit they've not played each other that many times. They've not played that many times since the year 2000. But in every game since that season where Luton won, the 99-2000 season, the pattern has been Burnley win at the Kenny and Luton draw at Turf Moor. And that's been the pattern the whole way through. So, a draw. Looks like it.
Fair enough. The poster behind us didn't seem to enjoy that particularly much because it's just come up at the corners, but we will carry on as professionals regardless of that. Yeah, that night at the Kenny, it wasn't the only time we've left the Kenny gutted, because obviously we were gutted when Liverpool scored an equaliser and we were gutted when Arsenal scored the winner. But it was the only time that 48, 72 hours on, you're still gutted. You shrugged off the Arsenal and the Liverpool ones because it's Arsenal and Liverpool. But for 90 seconds of that game, there was only going to be one winner of it. We would just equalised. We got 8 minutes or whatever it was, and we knew we were going to get another 5, 6, 7 minutes of injury time to go and score the winner. And it was the Alamo at that point, wasn't it? That's the second corner of the poster that's gone up. If the poster's dropped off by the end of this, it's nothing to do with what we're talking about, I'm sure. It's just freezing cold in this room. And then that sucker punch came. It was a fantastic strike, but we said it at the time, you don't let him cut in. And even when you let him cut in, to be fair, you don't expect him to pick the top bin out like that. But I think the feeling that everyone had that night will kind of carry us on Friday.
Yeah, I think it's got a really, also that the FA Cup game really was much ado about nothing, and everybody was a bit disappointed by that. Not to the same degree at all, but considering the performances have been such high intensity, and obviously you got those 2 wins over Christmas and deserved to get something out of the Chelsea game. You can take that, if you can bounce that form into this Burnley game, then it's just a very mouthwatering prospect, really. It feels like this one more than any of those other times that I mentioned, which is only just a handful. There's points here for Luton, 3 of them, but still, Luton I think got the upper hand, where Burnley, they really have to win this game, and that could play into Luton's hands.
Yep. You mentioned our record at Turf Moor. It's not fantastic, but we didn't lose there last season when they were this all-conquering side in the Championship, albeit it was the first home game, our first away game of the season. Dan Potts earned me a tidy sum scoring first that day. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be around to do it on Friday night. But if his replacements along the back line want to score first, I'll be more than happy for that to happen. We've kicked on since the Championship. They've not. There's been an awful lot of criticism about the fact that they've not changed, hasn't there? But I suspect they are changing recently. They've started conceding fewer goals. It's come at a detriment to the goals that they score as well, actually. They don't score as many goals. I watched them in the Cup on Friday night. They missed an absolute sitter. Amdouni had a great chance. I think the linesman flagged, but he wasn't offside. And then he missed a back heel in injury time when the keeper went up. But you look at the goal scoring of this Burnley side, they don't score many goals, which is weird, really, when you think how much of the ball they have, that they don't score many goals. I think we edge them on the goals scored, don't we? And I think we concede slightly fewer than those, although the goals against statistic neither would be particularly happy with. But yeah, they've not really... I wouldn't say they're a worse side than they were in the Championship, because obviously they're up against much better players. But I think the level of our improvement appears to be greater than the level of their improvement from the same time.
It does. I watched a few Burnley podcasts and read a few articles in the build up to this, and they do seem to be changing. I think they've slightly come to the realization they just can't play the way they did in the Championship and try and get results here. So they're slightly changing the way they're playing, and like you say, they're conceding less goals, which will make it a tight affair. But it's fag paper stuff. But Luton, when you average it out of the season, they're scoring 1.26 goals a game, and they're scoring 1. And we're conceding, both teams conceding 2, but they're conceding 2.05. Stats for you, isn't it? But so Luton are shading it. That obviously is reflected in the league table as well, and they've only got 3 points at home, and that was beating or thumping Sheffield United, really. So
10-man Sheffield United.
Yeah, exactly. So it's looking like I say, this is the time that we could go up there and get something. And if Luton can get it, if they can get 3 points, even a point would be reasonable. It's going to really, really kickstart 2024. Yeah,
we finished 2023 by saying that if we can win sort of 6 more home games, That gets us on to 33. So you're literally looking at individual points away from home. So a point here wouldn't be a bad result by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, you've got to win those 6 home games, but I think we're confident that there's 6 teams coming down here that we can beat. Let's look at this Burnley side in a wee bit more detail then. You only have to go back to the Kenilworth Road meeting to find out the danger man, because I thought Lyle Foster was particularly good that night. He's had his issues since then, hasn't he? He's had a spell out of the game with mental health issues, which is why he's not gone to the Africa Cup of Nations. He was due to play for South Africa, but they've not called him up. However, he is still allowed to play for Burnley during the Africa Cup of Nations, which obviously begins on Saturday night. We're going to have to keep an awful lot better control of him than we did in the first game, particularly when he makes those runs through the middle, either stop the pass or go with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a danger. There is a chance, as we record tonight, that he may not be available because he went off of a foot injury in that game against Spurs. And this Charlie Taylor is another player that there's a doubt with, but I think Foster's really more the danger man. He scored 4 Premier League goals in 11 Premier League starts, which is pretty good considering we just talked about they don't score many goals. So if he isn't available, that would be a boost as well, because obviously scored in the other game, didn't he? So yeah, he is a danger. Hopefully Luton could keep him quiet if he's playing, but I'd much rather if he couldn't play at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I don't see his name on the team sheet on Friday night, happy days. Yeah, James is right. We are obviously recording this well in advance, probably a bit more in advance than what we normally would do, just because the turnaround time, the fact it's Friday night and everything's come forward, things like that. So 1 or 2 pieces of team news that we'll discuss could be different by the time you watch or listen to this, but you get the kind of general feel of where we're coming from. Obviously, if Lyle Taylor is out, it would probably be Jay Rodriguez who would play through the middle. I think he scored twice against Sheffield United. I mean, to be fair, I'm surprised Sheffield United didn't score 4 of them that day. They seem to do an awful lot of that. I'm not too worried about him. We've played against him quite a few times coming through the leagues and things. I would be more worried about the fella alongside him, Zeki Amdouni, who at Kenilworth Road was another one of these that loved the feel of the Kenilworth Road turf because he was rolling around on it quite an awful lot, but it seems to have improved since then. I think he's a Swiss international, actually, and another one that we need to keep an eye on. Actually, probably need to keep an eye on him more than Foster because he has pot shots from here, there and absolutely everywhere, and as we saw in the first game, if you let someone shoot, you don't know where it's going to end up.
Yeah, he looks a dangerous player in attack. Certainly, running with the ball at his feet, he looks a dangerous player. But I think more and more, Luton are being able to deal with that a lot more, particularly with Gabe and Ted and Mengi now coming to the fore. Who, before the Bolton game, Rob Edwards was rightly, I thought, calling him a revelation this season. He has been, hasn't he? Because he doesn't look out of place whatsoever, and at 21 years old, and considering the issues Man United have got, blimey. I don't know.
That much of a revelation. He's worth about 100 million quid for the next 3.5 weeks. Hello, yes. Crystal Palace and hello, Fulham.
Yes, exactly. I mean that's not going to happen, is it? But yeah, nice one for trying to. Maybe these are mind games. Maybe the Premier League mind games. They're trying to destabilise a relegation rival, but that's not going to happen. He's staying at Luton. No bother with that. But yeah, I mean, I think they've looked quite comfortable with that since they've been playing together. And I think the one thing we don't want to do is, which happened at the Kenny numerous times, was leave so many spaces in the middle of the park. They just bulldozed their way through. Sander Berger just had the freedom of it, really. And if you don't give them that, I fancy Luton's chances. They will obviously want to play football. That's their style. Even though I said they're sort of adapting a bit more to be harder to score against, which there's obviously challenges in that. But they will have a lot more of the ball. They pass more than Luton. The stats bear it out. They've well over 100 passing more than Luton manage on average. So I think the best bet, and Luton have done this against most teams or tried to, is just make it horrible and ugly in those areas. And then where Luton are superior to almost anyone is getting it out wide and getting the crosses in the box. Maybe not necessarily in conversions of them, but using the flanks to great effect. And I think that's probably a great way to tackle this one.
They are harder to beat, Burnley, but if you watch the cup game on Friday night, they do still take stupid risks on the edge of their box. I mean, the Spurs goal, Amdouni himself actually tried to take someone on, and the Spurs defender didn't fall for it, and he got the ball and gave it to Porro, and 25 yards into the top corner, and thanks for coming, and that's them out of the FA Cup. So they are going to still take risks. It's just in their DNA to do that. So that's a positive, and we'll discuss how we can get at that shortly. But third sort of option for them, and when they come to Kenilworth Road, Luca Koleosho was really starting to thrive. He's out injured now. I think he's out for the rest of the season, which I thought at the time was a right touch for us. Obviously, I don't wish injury on anyone, but, we've got to finish above Burnley to stay up this season. That's an absolute stone cold certainty. But Wilson Odobert, now I've never heard of this fella, but he's come into the side. He scored an absolute worldie against Fulham, top bins, and he scored another one against someone else in a home game as well. He's got a shot on him, this fella. So we definitely, whoever it is who plays right back, and we'll come on to that soon, they need to make sure they keep him off of his right foot and show him down the line, because we saw the reverse sort of mirror image of it in the home game. We don't need a repeat of that.
No, absolutely not. It doesn't look like they've lost anything from the the injury and then him coming in, Koleosho and then him. It doesn't look like they've lost anything at all. He looks like he's really come out with a point to prove. I think Burnley as a whole played fantastically well against Liverpool and obviously Aston Villa, and just sort of came up short. But everything that they did attacking wise was very quick and pacey, and that obviously is going to be a problem for anybody. Luton are not going to be immune to that, but don't let it get to that stage. I think would probably be the thing that you're going to look to do. But he's it looks a decent find. Keep him quiet at all costs, I think.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I suppose the good thing is Burnley, like you say, they've only beat Sheffield United at home, which really doesn't count much this season. So confidence, even though they've performed well against Liverpool and against Aston Villa, and to an extent against Tottenham in the Cup, confidence can't be particularly high, because you only get confidence from winning games. So we need to feed on the fact that they could be low on confidence. It's another one of those games, and we've said it so many times in podcasts, the first goal in the Premier League's massive, but it feels massive in this one.
Yeah, well, I mean, there could be a nervy factor as well, because only getting 3 points at home all season will have its knock-on effect to the terraces as well. I mean, they'll obviously see it as a massive game, and one that the onus would be on them to beat Luton. They would feel that would be what they should be doing because of the way they played last season. The recent, not so recent, last 20 years worth of performances against Luton. They'll feel that, and they'll demand that, I guess, not least because they know that they have to win the game. So if Luton can really make it a little bit ugly and frustrate the crowd, it can go both ways, can't it? It can frustrate the crowd, make the players nervy, or the other way around, and then that's kind of part of the job done, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's a huge part. Let's bring it back on to Luton then. We'll kind of reflect from the Chelsea game, really. So when I ask if you see any changes to the starting lineup, obviously there'll be one. There's no Issa Kabore from the Chelsea game, but the team that started that Chelsea game was pretty much where we've got to in our kind of first 11 now that Tom's out for the foreseeable. Do you see any other changes to that Chelsea team other than someone coming in for Kabore?
No, not really.
We don't quite know the situation with Jacob Brown, do we? He wasn't even on the bench against Bolton at the weekend, and it didn't really come to light because the focus was on the Jordan Clarks and the Tahith Chongs of this world. But so we're hopeful that Brown's okay and he was just literally given the afternoon off.
Well, yeah, particularly because he does so much of the pressing work. And if you're considering that Burnley like to play at the back and have a mistake in them, then you'd want him to be up there doing what he's done so well in the last month or so. So, yeah, I don't know about whether he will even feature yet because it's too early in the week. But I think the only change will be whoever comes in for Kabore, wouldn't it? And maybe I would imagine they're earmarking Ogbeni for that after.
It wouldn't make much sense to play him there for 90 minutes when you have the chance to try whoever it is that's going to be there. It wouldn't make much sense to play him there for 90 minutes, particularly when Kabore, they'd gone out of their way to keep Kabore here and then only put him on the bench for it not to be him.
Mm.
I don't think Ogbeni was particularly bad, was he? And obviously he's got the pace to deal with this Odebear fella as well, which would be equally as helpful. So I think I'd much rather that for this game than Doughty being over there and Giles. I'll come on to why in a second. But yeah, he didn't do nothing wrong against Bolton, did he, Chio? And he's got the pace to get up and down. And it's a role he's played for Rotherham quite a few times by all accounts.
Yeah, he has. I mean, I'm still not overly convinced he's totally shaken off this injury. He doesn't seem to be his explosive self, particularly more with the ball at his feet. I think he could probably match the guy for pace if he's trying to chase him in a defensive capacity. But he doesn't seem to have the same spark at the moment, really. And, when he was flying earlier in the season, when he got into the side, we were talking about all he needs to do is have, 20 to 30 yards of space behind the defender and knock it past and run. It doesn't seem to be there at the moment quite. Maybe the opportunities aren't there and people have seen that and they've tightened that up a bit. But, I think that's probably the way they'll go for that position.
Maybe he saved it for this game. That'd be rather nice, wouldn't it? The reason why I want Ogbeni or whoever it is and not Doughty on that right-hand side is because they've got Vitinho on their right back. Now, it was Connor Roberts when they came down here, wasn't it? But they've changed to Vitinho, and he's a winger. He played against us as a winger, and everything I've seen him do, he's a winger. Defensively, he doesn't look particularly great. I'm absolutely certain that Alfie can get at him down that side. I think Doughty's going to be a big person anyway because their set piece record defensively is horrendous. You can't get away from the fact that considering they've got a world-class centre-back as their manager, one of the best centre-backs Premier League's ever seen, probably going to be in the top 3 or 4 Premier League centre-backs of all time. They cannot defend set pieces this side. It doesn't help that their goalkeeper's got ants in his pants every single time a cross comes near him. But they cannot defend set pieces. So Alfie's going to be a massive player throughout the course of this game. But I really do think in open play as well, he'll get at this Vitinha fella down that right-hand side, down our left-hand side. And I don't want Doughty on the right. Doughty on the left. Whoever on the right, please.
Yeah, I know Edwards sees he can play both, but he just doesn't seem as effective as when he plays on the left. He's far more confident and direct when he plays on the left, to my eyes. But however Luton have attacked the game this season, the joy has always come down the flanks. A lot of the time left, but the right's been more useful since Kabore's come back from that international break, got a lot better. I know he had the mistake against Chelsea, but you can discount that. But in a forward capacity, it was a lot better. And, one thing that Luton, these teams are really quite closely matched in all the stats you can find. But when it comes to aerial duels, Luton have won like 200 or something like that than Burnley. So you get it down the wings and you get the ball in the box. They're by far and away the most direct at doing that in the Premier League, and they get more crosses in than nearly everybody else. So that's a weapon. You've got to try and exploit that because they will want to play football on the deck. Luton can play that way. 2 contrasting styles completely. I was really excited to watch that, in fact, and how that pans out. But if Luton can get that right, as well as the set piece delivery, which we've seen, which is also another big part of their armoury, then it could be a really, really exciting night.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't forget we scored from a set piece there last year, and nothing's improved in terms of the defending of set pieces. And I do believe, listening to the commentary on Friday night, it's Clive Tilsley, who's one of the most researched commentators going around. He thinks that Jordan Bayer, their centre-back, is out for a while. So if he's out for a while, he's definitely going to be out for this game 7 days after that one. So if he's their better centre-back and he's missing, definitely happy days. Now, a lot of our play this season comes down the left, but there'll be one man who hopes a lot of our play comes down our right in this game, because Andros Townsend hasn't just got a point to prove because he signed a new contract, and he hasn't got a point to prove because he signed a new contract anyway. He fully deserves that new contract, but he's got a point, or he'll feel a point to prove in this game. He won't come out and say it. He's professional. He's media trained. He knows the score, not to rile up the opposition and everything. But I think I can say it for him. If there's one game this season, and of course he wants to win plenty of games this season, but if there's one that he's got ringed in fluorescent pen on his calendar, it's Burnley away, isn't it? After the treatment of him by Burnley in the summer, where by all accounts he'd done the pre-season, he'd agreed a contract, he only had to sign it, and he went in to sign it, and they basically ripped it up in front of his face and said, no, we're going with someone younger. That person who's younger was Koleosho, so fair enough. That's kind of worked out well for them. But he hasn't forgotten it, has he? He's mentioned it a few times in interviews and things, and we're waiting for that 30-yard ship pinger into the top corner, aren't we? And I wonder if it's going to come on Friday night.
Well, maybe he was getting his sights in against Bolton in the FA Cup then, because he had a few that just slightly went over. But yeah, it's if ever you need, he doesn't need motivation for many of these games, but if any, it was pretty poor. I mean, we don't know all the ins and outs. We just know that one side of it, but it is pretty poor to get to the stage where you're offering a player a contract and then ruling it out after, at the very end of the summer, because he came to Luton in October, didn't he? So he obviously had to start again in terms of trialing, and Luton gave him a chance, and everything he said since that about Luton giving him a chance and signing the new contract speaks volumes about what he thinks about Luton. But the adverse must be in effect as well against Burnley, because you don't go on to national media and say that he was left in tears and devastated, thinking that his career was over after that move. So on the one hand, you can understand why they go for youth, but so far down the line, it seems a bit cruel, really. And if it proves motivating, all the better, because Andros has been fantastic since he's come, and he's been growing every game. He says he's got more to come. He's got more fitness to come. He's got more sharpness, which is, to be fair, mate, I don't doubt that he has. He was out since March 2022 until he got that first appearance for Luton a couple of months back, and he's been a Premier League player for his entire career. So yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting prospect of where he can get to if he's not quite 100% at the moment, because he's one of the Luton's best performers.
The irony being that Koleosho is now out for the season with injury, and they didn't take Townsend because of his injury record. Yeah, there probably is more to come from Townsend, isn't there? You only have to look at the progression of Ross Barkley with every game that he plays. I think all Luton fans be excited that there's lots to come from Townsend. Chicken feet might not be quite so excited, because it means more of them are going to get consumed, but each to their own, and all of that. The other issue, I don't think it's an issue actually. Talking point maybe, Elijah or Morris through the middle.
Elijah. It's I don't know what it is. I don't think it's through lack of effort, but it's just not clicking for Morris.
He's in one of those ruts of, not ruts, he's in one of those periods that every striker goes through.
Yeah.
Just needs someone to spank a ball and hit him on his arse and fly in the corner or something, and then he's off and running again. Ironically, it was against this lot that Elijah caught fire, wasn't it, when he scored against Burnley?
For about 5 seconds.
Well.
Yeah, but I get your point. But it's Morris is having an effect. He obviously came on and turned the game against Sheffield United, so you can't say that he's totally out of sorts. But he's a striker and he will want to score goals. And
Chelsea, for that matter.
Yes,
We
He
couldn't
gave
get near them until
he gave Thiago Silva food for thought. Absolutely. But Elijah's in. He's had far more goal opportunities. He's scored more goals, obviously, but he's had far more goal opportunities. He's been in the right place more than Morris has, and I don't know whether that's a symptom of what they're being asked to play when they're on the pitch. It didn't quite work when they were both on the pitch together against Bolton, which is weird because it did the entire championship season. They worked great together. They've obviously been asked to play virtually a sort of a lone central striker role with two players either side them when they're in attack. So it's not been the same this season. They haven't had that partnership, but yeah, it's just I've struggled to think of a time since the Everton goal where Morris has been in a really great position to score. You could maybe say the Bolton header where Baxter saved it. It was got it on target and it was a reasonable save. But
Petrovic save against Chelsea as well, wasn't it? The header that Petrovic pushed onto the crossbar.
Yeah.
But again, he did nothing wrong with that. It's just a world-class save from a very talented goalkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think he did. He also got a knock as well, which is why he came off against Bolton. But after the Bolton game, Edwards wasn't too concerned about that. It was like a bit of stiffness, maybe.
Cramp,
so a bit of cramp. Yeah. So it's a shame for him because you'd need him to get to 90 minutes in that game. You'd have thought, but it didn't quite happen. But yeah, even against Bolton, there wasn't that many opportunities really for him to. He played really quite well in the first 20 minutes.
Kind of played deeper, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's almost behind. He's almost the link between Barkley and Elijah, wasn't he? Kind of like that Harry Kane when he comes deep and links the play up and things, didn't he? It was more that sort of role than the out and out number 9.
Yeah, and maybe it's that. Maybe if he's just the target man and the goal scorer, maybe that's a little bit different. We had these sorts of discussions when James Collins wasn't scoring and he was trying to do too much, going out wide in positions he wasn't meant to, and then I think it was Nathan Jones at the time just told him not to do that and just stay within the 6-yard area of the central part of the pitch, and then the goals started coming. But I think that we're in a different world in the Premier League where you have got to do a lot more, really, and so maybe that aspect is slightly taking something away, or it could just be that things are really clicking for Elijah in the vice versa way that it didn't last term, where Morris got 20 goals and Elijah didn't.
Yeah, it's football, isn't it? It's peaks and troughs and everything like that. Yeah, it's Elijah for me. I just think he presses better. I think he glides across the, he just that natural athlete, isn't he? The size of him and everything. He can press both the defenders with a lot less sort of, not effort because he's still putting effort in, but he's not putting in as much energy into
it. Looks effortless.
Yeah, it does.
Say it does look effortless, and it has been a great weapon for Luton. That it always has been. Remember when him and Alan Campbell really led that press so well when they were together. But he's still doing it, and he runs and chases, and against Bolton he was doing it, and it does look like he's found his feet really in this division, and confidence is everything, really, isn't it? It's after that Tottenham Tottenham game where he missed that sitter and all the horribleness that came after it to turn it around so well and be in those positions to score. Obviously probably should have had one more at least. Obviously that goal gets chalked off because of the tragedy that happened to Tom, and I'm sure he won't be thinking about that whatsoever. But just shows you he's in those positions, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he's shown that he's more of an aerial threat as well, hasn't he? In recent times, and as we just alluded to, if they're pants from defending crosses and set pieces, again, Elijah would be a key man. Not that Morris wasn't. He had a couple of headers from corners, didn't he, against Bolton that goalkeeper got to before someone else would tap in. So, but yeah, I think Elijah for me, Bolton away can be the one that Morris gets his mojo back. I think, and obviously, you know, they're going to go 2v2 in middle, aren't they? Barkley and Sambi going to go up against Berger and another. Remains to be seen. Usually it's Josh Brownhill, isn't it? It's kind of fancy us to get the better of that sort of combination, and if we do, could unlock many a key to many a door.
Well, certainly from the Burnley podcasts that I've listened to in the last week or so, Berger isn't being deployed in the same way he was when they came down to the Kenny, where he was having that freedom and he was playing more of a defensive mid position, which would be great because I don't want to see him marauding through the middle of the pitch again like he was, particularly in that first half at the Kenny. So that would be useful. But you know, Ross Barkley's been the better player on the pitch than virtually every multi-million-pound star that he's come up against in midfield. So, I mean, even against Bolton, he had a pretty good game. Wasn't to the heights of those games that he's played against Liverpool and City and Arsenal, but he was still pulling the strings where he could. So, you just fancy him against anyone, didn't you?
You absolutely do, yeah. Somehow the Premier League found eight players to nominate for their Player of the Month ahead of him. Now, if there were 8 players in the Premier League better than Ross Barkley in December,
yeah, madness.
I never saw them. That is for absolute sure. Okay, that's the kind of preview of the match. As always, we'll finish this episode of the podcast with a score prediction. James has already told you it's going to be a draw, so I assume your score prediction is going to have the same goals on both sides.
Well, just going by the statistics, I'm trying to be a bit more methodical now. They both concede at least 2 goals a game by the statistics, them slightly more. Luton have only drawn up there every single time that we've gone there since 2000. They need a win. Luton would be reasonably happy with a draw. I think it's nailed on. I'm going to say this with my head that I think it'll be 2-2, hoping that it's a win, but I think it'll be 2-2.
Desmond, for James, I've no problem with a draw, but it's a bloody long way to go if it's 0-0. So, especially if it's as bad as a 0-0 as what Sunday was, I can't be doing 2 of them in a week.
I mean, the clean sheet record of the 2 teams doesn't suggest that will be the case.
It's very much encouraging me that I'm going to see some goals, and I think we're going to see 3 goals on Friday night because I think Luton are going to win 2-1. Yeah, I take on board everything that you've said. I just think we're going to score from a set piece or a crosser of some kind. I just can't believe that the quality that we put into the box from those dead ball situations. And it's not, I mean, we flagged Alfie. It's not just Alfie. Andros Townsend will do it on the other side. Ross Barkley can do it as well. I don't remember a Luton team being so good at set pieces.
Yeah,
ever,
you're right.
Actually.
No, you're right. Every time that they get one, there's a sense of anticipation about what may come. And
I mean, rugby teams kind of play for certain sort of set piece situations, don't they? Whether if you're good at a scrum, you play for a scrum. If you're good at lineouts, you play. Luton tend to, we're playing for corners now, aren't we? A corner's actually probably more likely to score than a penalty. It's just ridiculous how often it ends up in the back of the net when Alfie's putting a ball over from a corner.
Yeah, it is really a great sight. It's exciting to see as well. I mean, it's not often that you see that, particularly in the Premier League. We've all seen they try to play these nice, pretty patterns, and that does work to a certain extent until you get to a team that just wants to defend deep against you, and then it's not as great. I mean, even when Man City had loaded the ball at the Kenny, and we remarked how they're incredible footballers, and they can do that so well. they're brilliant. It's also very boring. Luton total opposite, just hugely direct, and there's very few better sights in football than a headed goal from a great cross.
And there's going to be so many queuing up, the two centre backs, because Amari stays back, doesn't he? Eli. And if they're that bad at defending set pieces, and they are, the statistics tell you that they are, then I think Luton will score from one of them. And I'd be surprised if we don't score in open play. If they keep on taking risks at the back, we've got Elijah there pressing. Andros Townsend's getting about and pressing quite well these days. And of course, any second balls that are doing the rounds, Ross Barkley's all over, isn't he? Like German measles. So, I think we'll score a couple of goals. And, if we can take the lead, we saw it out pretty well at Everton, didn't we? We saw it out against Crystal Palace when we had another half a day to defend in injury time. Saw it out very well against Newcastle. No problem at all. And once we took the lead against Sheffield United, saw that out very well as well. So generally when we're in front, we've learnt, haven't we? We've learnt from that Arsenal and that Liverpool game, and probably didn't even have to learn, because Luis Diaz is £100 million player, Declan Rice £100 million player. That's all the difference was. It wasn't necessarily learning. So I think if we get our noses in front, coupled with the fact that they have to win, or the perception is that they have to win and the crowd might turn on them and everything else, I think we'll see it through. I really do. I think very similar to the Sheffield United game. I think there will be goals. You've just spoken about the clean sheet record, or the lack of it. Although ironically, Krul's matched Kaminsky in a lot less games, hasn't he? Although Kaminsky's never been that underworked before. So I think there'll be goals. Just got a feeling that we'll win the game. Everyone that you've spoken to said how big a game it is, didn't they? Jordan Clark said that this is a big game, and they're not hiding from it. Sometimes teams go into these big games, they try and play it down, don't they? Almost scared to think how big it is. We don't do that. We kind of take it on the chin and sort of talk about it and accept the situation, so that when we get to that situation, we kind of play with a little bit more, not freedom, but positivity, belief.
I think there's a decent degree of good psychology in this Luton team, and you saw that in the preparation for the playoff final. In particular, I'm just using that as a case in point, and the way that they set up for penalties. They weren't playing for penalties, but in the off chance that they did have to take them, and they did everything. They said they did for a week worth of practice, from the way that you walk up to the ball, the way you put it down, the way you take your time, pick a spot, the way people stand on the sidelines, and everything. The psychology was huge, and we saw what penalty shootout that was back in May. So I think that's that if they can take that and put it into games like this, where they know it is huge, it's a massive game.
Well, that all comes from the manager, doesn't it? And the manager's calm, he's humble, he's calculated, he installs belief and everything else. I mean, that Sheffield United game being the case in point, we didn't panic when we went 2-1 down. He just made his subs. Okay, they scored the goals for us, but who's to say that in the time that was left, well, he wouldn't have scored anyway, because we were throwing everything at them. Whereas his predecessor, when you went a goal down under Nathan Jones, we might as well have just opened the turnstiles and strolled off, because the amount of times it turned around, it just didn't happen, particularly away from home. I have a lot more confidence that Rob Edwards has got the tools to do the job if we do fall behind. And that set piece thing is just so enticing. So I think we'll win the game. I think we'll win the game 2-1. I wouldn't be against 2-2. Absolutely, I wouldn't. But if we can win and get above Everton, and then stick the telly on Sunday and see what happens. I think they're at home to Aston Villa, aren't they? Come on, Villa. And it'd be nice, wouldn't it, if we're reviewing this. We'll review this Sunday night, obviously, even though the game's on Friday. We both like to go out a bit on Saturday night, don't we? We're not giving up our Saturday nights just because the game's on a Friday.
No, come on now. Let's be sensible.
So hopefully when we review this on Sunday, Aston Villa have done a bit of a job, and we're celebrating a Luton win, and everyone will be happy.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, that would be the ideal situation, wouldn't it? But I think the possibility for a decent result and then an excellent result, the odds are with Luton, aren't they? Really, they just have to win their game. They have to win. That's it. And if they don't, it could be a huge thing for Luton in terms of springboard, could be sort of a nail in the coffin for them thinking, wow, we're not going to do this. There's this stat, isn't there, that
they're gone, aren't they, based on this stat?
Every team that has lost 15 games, 15 of their first 20 games in the Premier League, all of them have been relegated. There's only a handful of them. It's like Derby, obviously, that points lowest record, Sheffield United, and a couple of others. But
Sunderland, I think.
But Luton aren't in that bracket. So if they can elevate themselves above it by virtue of a win, even a draw would be okay. But to keep them stuck in there, because they'll be targeting this as a game that they should be winning to try and get themselves out of where they are. And if Luton don't let them, then who knows what it could be for the rest of the season.
And also, if we win, they haven't got a cup game, so they're stewing on this for the better part of 2.5 weeks, because we've got this stupid winter break cobblers in the Premier League this month. I mean, how you play 7 games in December and decide to have a break in January, I've no idea, but that's for another time and another day. So yeah, huge game, not must win. Although, for the purposes of the fact that we won a must-win game at Sheffield United, we're going to call it must-win. That's for sure. Yeah, 2-1 for me, 2-2 for James. Let us know your score predictions. Have to say, guys, you're about as bad at these score predictions as what we are, to be fair. I mean, we couldn't have got the Bolton one any more wrong if we tried.
We haven't read any of your score predictions out, because none of them are completely correct.
Exactly, yeah. Possibly a slightly easier one here. I think the chances of goals in this one are pretty high. So probably if you send all your 0-0 score results in, they'll be the ones that get read out. We will read out any correct ones after the in the review show, which, as I say, we will record on Sunday. As I said right at the start, if you're not going to the game, TNT Sports is the place for this one. 7:45 kickoff. It's a huge game. You definitely don't want to miss it. And if you can still get up there, do believe tickets are still available, and I think they will still be available when you watch this podcast. So if you can get a ticket, do so. The boys need all of our support on Friday night. It's a pretty big one, this one. That's it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you to, all of you for watching or listening. Thanks to James for your company and for previewing this game. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, we're closing in on 1,000 YouTube subscribers. We would love to hit that by the end of the month. We've got a big giveaway planned when we hit that. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It will benefit you. These podcasts are coming a bit more erratically over January because of the break and all the silly scheduling that goes along with it. So you'll find out exactly when it drops, and you won't miss a single episode of the longest running Luton Town podcast, the only one to go from League 2 to the Premier League, and it's 3 Premier League points that we so dearly hope we get on Friday night. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, thanks to the Hightown Club for hosting the podcast, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for the intros, and to Ed Smith Creative for the designs that you see on set. And also thanks to Jan, the president of the Scandinavian Hatters, for that scarf that James alluded to in a recent podcast. We're going to have that pride of place on the podcast throughout the rest of the season and beyond. We really appreciate that.
Also, Ed Smith Creative, who did the logo that we've got, he's a bit of a musician as well, and he's just released an EP called Born in Luton. So you can get that on Spotify. Check it out.
I caught some of that on his Facebook, and it's very good, isn't it? So, big props to Ed. Obviously, he used to work, I think he still does actually work for the club in a freelance capacity.
Yeah, does the programs, that sort of stuff.
So, support for one of our own very much there. Thanks for listening. And until next time, come on, you Hatters.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.